Look at that. That conjures a million memories, doesn't it? According to the movie, had a compass in the stock and a thing that tells time. These were my kids, his and hers, right? Kind of brings a tear to my eye thinking about how long ago it was I had those youngsters out in the backyard shooting pop cans. People ask all the time about when do they teach their kids about guns and what. I'm going to share what I view on that. You know, I was the oldest of 7 boys. My parents had 11 kids. I have 2 older sisters. That's me and all my brothers. Check that out, many moons ago. Now the little guy down there, he's in his 20s. That's me with the engineer hat on there. Good memories. But I had seven boys in the family, 6 little brothers, and my parents had 11 total. I got 2 little sisters. So I was kind of tasked with the firearm safety. My dad wasn't into guns, which is fine. And my parents allowed me at the ripe old age of about 13 to get this bad boy. This was my Red Ryder. In a sense, I wanted this thing more than anything. A very basic Remington 870 Express pump. Boy, I've taken more money from guys with fancy clay shooting guns with this bone stock basic 870 pump. And we'll come back to that. I think before we think about when should we teach our kids or what should we teach our kids in reference to guns, we should think about why we are teaching them about the guns. Of course, we want to think about safety, right? We want them to understand safe practices, but that's not the why I'm talking about. You know, we're a democratic republic. There's a lot of people that argue we're not a democracy. Well, we are in fact a democracy, but we have a republic form of government. And the cool thing about a democracy is we, the people, get to collectively make our laws, except we have liberty. And the cool thing about a republic is, regardless of what the masses say, our liberty still stands, or it should. The masses can't, according to our Constitution, say, you know what, you shouldn't have guns anymore. Now that's happening. Why I'm telling you this is I believe that the beginning of your education for your children should be in a firm and steadfast belief in our Constitution, in what our founders designed. You should help to pass on to your kids even when they're little. I mean, we explain to our kids about religion. We explain to our kids about love, about sharing, about kindness. We should instill in them the same depth and breadth as we would for things like religion or love of a sibling or a grandparent. The same depth and breadth about the love of our country, about our Constitution, about what citizenship is, about what sacrifice is. Because in that, you will start to build a foundation where it is not just respect for a tool, but respect how that right came to be. Yes, some of you might say that's not a right given by man. It's not. It's defined by man and given to you from birth. Except in this world that we live in, man can strip you of that right. So I do not think that we should start out by just teaching our kids about the mechanics, but rather how and why it came to be that we live in this great place, this democratic republic, where we can vote, where we can pass laws, where we can continue to proliferate the things that were given to us, or at the very least challenge ourselves to do so. So I say let's start with that. And if we wrap the training with the guns around that idea, it will develop a deeper level of respect if you do your part. When do you teach them? I say right out of the gate. You don't give a 1-year-old a gun, but we expose them to these concepts. And it's not through an exposure to inundate them into a lifestyle, but to respect tools in general. As a young kid, so my parents, I told you, had 11 kids. It was very important that the older siblings, myself and some of my 2 older sisters, the next sister below me, I'm the 3rd oldest, and some of the other ones, to help with food preparation. My mom, to this day, still cranking out meals a couple times a day. I had a delicious pasta with her last night, actually, but she couldn't do it. So we had to learn to use a vegetable peeler, learn to chop and slice and mash and do whatever had to be done. Otherwise you couldn't eat. And I think back, there's no instances that I think of where somebody was in that kitchen, had to be hauled off to the hospital because they lopped a thumb or finger off. There was probably a cut or two, but for the most part, you started out with kind of a dull knife, right? And you could whack through a potato with a pretty dull knife. I don't mean whack, but pressure your way through it. Most vegetables you can cut through with a fairly dull implement. And don't tell me a dull knife's more dangerous than a sharp one. Bullshit. I've never cut myself with a dull knife. I have with a sharp one. But we begin to instill ideas of concepts of safety. Things like working around the stove, working in the yard, working around fire, right? I think too many parents, and this is again Mickey's philosophy, tend to try to protect their young from the dangers of this world. And in a lot of ways, it's a little bit ironic. The parents that do all of this protecting allow their kids to fill their heads and their hearts with all manner of scum, right? The video games they play, the music they listen to, the friends that they're around, the thoughts, the way that the parents speak to those kids. You better go out and find some kind of career where you hope to make a semblance of a living because life's hard, rather than telling that kid you can rise to whatever station you want in life. So this discussion about the guns, I think, is way broader than just at what age do you start telling them. So one of the things I did right out of the gate was I wanted my younger brothers, I remember as a teenager, I want to make sure they understand how scary these things are. So, quick story for me. I am blind in this eye because at the ripe old age of about 12, if memory serves, it's funny how these details fade. I was out with a group of guys and we were, this is farmland we lived on, and we were shooting our pellet guns. A boy decided to point his gun right at my face, point blank, pulled the trigger, and it put me in the hospital. Took the vision in this eye. Lucky to be alive, actually, from the way that scenario worked out. So I had a really acute awareness of things like muzzle direction. And the sad thing was, at that point, we were all, myself included, pretty darn safe. This kid, he was a child, made an egregious mistake. He thought the gun was unloaded. Those kinds of things, of course, for us adults, we would cringe to think about it, but this is a child. So one of the things I did was I would take this gun and I would get some birdshot and some slugs. And I would take some stuff and put it out on our farm range, like maybe a pumpkin, maybe a cinder block, maybe a board, some various things like that. And we'd sit and shoot them. And you'd watch the pumpkin and the cinder block and the board and whatever it was we'd shoot at, a rotten fence post, get destroyed, right, from the buckshot, the birdshot, and the slug. And I'd talk to my brothers and say, hey, imagine if that hit you or him. And we understood that thing doesn't get pointed. We understood from the beginning, fingers don't go on the trigger. Safety is important. Red means dead, but we never rely on that. The fail-safe, no matter what, if this muzzle's pointed in the safe direction, nobody will ever get hurt. Maybe our pride, but nobody will ever get hurt if that muzzle is always in a direction away from people. Ingrain that into the kid from day one. But you don't make the child fearful of the tool. Why? Because everything that we make forbidden, we want to find out about, right? Everything that you make forbidden, a young child wants to go learn more about. So you don't make it forbidden, but you allow them to ask the questions, to touch safely, to be able to use it. If, of course, you're not going to put like a 3-year-old behind a 12 gauge, but that's why you have things like a Red Ryder or smaller caliber weapons. You know, as my son got older, we got him into this. And this is, you know, a compact Mossberg shotgun. He's shot this at anything from birds to clay pigeons to deer. We've got a slug barrel for it. Other family members, friends, kids have borrowed this gun and used it. It's a great, inexpensive shotgun. It's small for the kid to hold. You expose them not just to the weapon, but to the concepts of what those weapons are for. Notice I'm using the word weapon. I'm not talking about hunting, although we hunted with them. The taking of life is a serious thing, and we did not and do not make light of that, be it an animal or a human. And the only reason that we would ever be shooting at a human would be to protect the life of innocent people. So we take that very seriously. Where I'm going with all of this is this should become not just a discussion in when and how to teach your kids, but your philosophy of life, what you're passing on to them, the love and respect for fellow life of any kind. In that, when you fully appreciate what our founders did, when you fully begin to develop respect for all living things, that in itself gives you pause when you are holding an instrument in your hand that can take or end or alter life, right? I think therein lies the biggest issue with all of these horrific shootings. I'm gonna segue this into the school shootings and terrible murders that we've had the last 10, 15 years, where young men have gone into public places to let their hatred for society out, their hatred for themselves, because they can't connect and they want to take that out on people. That is a lack of love and respect for life. I'm not making any judgment on parents, but I think that we would begin to see a marked change in these types of events happening when people begin to take a greater care about the kids that are in their life, maybe not even your own. Begin to take a greater care of what's going on in these young people's lives, what's going on maybe in their home, if there's abuse or violence, if they're heartbroken, if they're lonely, none of these things are excuses to murder children, of course not. But how selfish have we become when we no longer are taking active part in the lives of children around us? This is why I can't just talk flippantly about when do you teach a kid about a gun. The answer is never, in my opinion, never, if you are not going to teach them the depth and breadth of what I'm talking about. A respect for life, a respect for liberty, because without a respect for those things, this is nothing but a dangerous weapon that nobody should have. Do you dig it? You might not like the way I say that, but if you do not completely respect liberty and life, like the sanctity of it, you should not have the right to a weapon. And that is something that the founders understood. That is something that we have begun to lose here. We're desensitized to the crimes that we see, and it doesn't mean that the world is getting worse. It is not. We're way better than we've ever been. Less crime, less murder, less death, longer lives. Except we see the worst because we have this ability to instantly communicate. And if we're too wrapped up in our own shit and in our own selves to see what a young person's going through to help them so that we don't have these situations and know we can't fix and solve everything. But if we're so wrapped up in ourselves, then we truly are looking at and investing our time and energy in the wrong things. So full circle. When do you teach a young person? From day one. What do you teach them? A respect for liberty, for our country's values, which are a respect for life, a respect for freedom, a respect for the way other people think, even if it's not in line with you, right? Standing up for life, standing up for other people's rights. That is a terrible fallacy right now, propagated by both sides of the aisle, that you're wrong if you don't agree with me. That's disgusting. There's way too many people that profess to be lovers of freedom under the banner of the Second Amendment. Yeah, it's a pink Red Ryder. There's way too many people that profess to be the Second Amendment protectors as long as you agree with them. That's not how it works at all. That's not how it works one bit. Liberty is this very broad swath. It only becomes an issue when the other side or the other person intends to deprive you of your rights illegally, when they intend to deprive you of your rights or tell you how you need to think. And there is plenty of that going on, but it doesn't solve anything when we ourselves are doing that. So we can't be passing that on to our children. We need to be teaching our kids to love and respect others, to love and respect this nation, to love and respect the great right that we have here that nobody else in the world really does. Because their people do not stand up to protect and defend that right. That is what we need. Not kids that know how to shoot guns. Not kids that know how to be safe with them. That needs to happen. We need to develop children that love and respect the reason that that right exists. To stop the oppression of tyranny, to protect the innocent from those that seek to prey upon them. And in that you will raise a child that respects the weapon, but respects its purpose more so. Mickey with CarryTrainer.com. Maybe, just maybe, if you're a cool mom or dad, you will get your kid something like this for Christmas. Or maybe if you're really cool, something like this. Yep. Be a good dad. Buy your kid something cool for Christmas. Don't take that the wrong way. I don't want to get a bunch of stupid comments. Seek to do right, guys. That's the best I can tell you on this. Train your child from the time that they are young in the righteous use of force to protect and defend life. In that, they will develop all of the things that they need to do right by the law, to do right by each other, and to do right by you as a parent, and then themselves as they enter into their adult life. It is not the tool, it is the person that wields the tool which makes it evil or righteous. And of course, buy something cool like a Langdon Tactical 1301. See how I linked that in? Bam. Be well.